Hello, my friends. Welcome to Learning English with Nhat Lin. I'm very happy that you are here with me today. In this lesson, we are going to explore the history of how the nation of Japan was formed, from its mythical beginnings to the birth of a unified country. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let us begin our journey. Imagine a chain of islands rising from the ocean, tall mountains covered in mist, forests that seem endless, rivers that move quietly between green valleys. And beneath the ground, fire, volcanoes sleeping, sometimes waking, earth that trembles without warning. Have you ever imagined a land born from both water and flame? Japan is not a single piece of land. It is an archipelago. An archipelago is a group of islands. More than 6,000 islands stretch across the Pacific Ocean. For centuries, the sea protected these islands. It separated them from the great civilizations of China and Korea. It kept them close enough to learn, but far enough to remain different. Long before written history, before emperors and samurai, the people of these islands told stories about their creation. According to ancient belief, two divine beings, Izanagi and Izanami, stood on a bridge between heaven and earth. They stirred the ocean with a jeweled spear. When they lifted it, drops of water fell back into the sea and became islands. From these islands, life began. This story is part of Shinto, the native spiritual tradition of Japan. Shinto does not focus on one single god. It teaches that spirits called kami live in mountains, rivers, trees, and even in the wind. Nature is not separate from life. It is sacred. From the very beginning, Japan saw itself not just as land, but as something spiritual. Archaeologists tell us that humans lived on these islands for thousands of years. One of the earliest cultures is known as the Jomon culture. The word Jomon means cord-marked, because these people decorated their clay pots with rope patterns. They were hunters, fishers, and gatherers. They lived close to forests and coastlines. They respected the rhythm of the seasons. Life was simple, but it was not primitive. They created beautiful pottery long before many other civilizations. They buried their dead with care. They formed small communities based on cooperation. Later, a new influence arrived from the Asian mainland. Around 3,000 years ago, people brought rice farming to the islands. Rice changed everything. Agriculture means growing crops for food. With agriculture, people could stay in one place. Villages became larger. Leaders emerged. Society grew more organized. The Yei period marked this transformation. Metal tools appeared. Weapons became stronger. Land became valuable. Clans began to compete for power. A clan is a large family group connected by blood and loyalty. Among these clans, one would slowly rise above the others. Its name was Yamato. The Yamato clan established control over much of central Japan. Its leaders claimed something extraordinary. They said they were descendants of the sun goddess, Amaterasu. This claim gave them divine authority. Authority means the recognized power to rule. The ruler of Yamato became known as the emperor. In the beginning, the emperor was both political leader and spiritual symbol. The imperial line of Japan is said to be one of the oldest continuous dynasties in the world. A dynasty is a series of rulers from the same family. As centuries passed, Japan looked outward. It observed the powerful empire of China. From China came writing, Buddhism, systems of government, and philosophy. Japanese leaders sent students and envoys to learn from the continent. But they did not simply copy. They adapted. They blended foreign ideas with native tradition. Buddhism spread alongside Shinto. Chinese characters were modified to create the Japanese writing system. A centralized court formed in the city of Nara and later in Heian-kyo, which we now call Kyoto. The Heian period became an age of elegance. The imperial court valued poetry, music, and beauty. Aristocrats wore layered silk robes. They wrote delicate letters by candlelight. One woman, Murasaki Shikibu, wrote what many consider the world's first novel, The Tale of Genji. Yet while court life was refined, power in the countryside was shifting. Large landowners built private armies to protect their property. These warriors became known as samurai. The word samurai means one who serves. They served their lords with loyalty and discipline. Over time, the warrior class grew stronger than the court nobles. In the late 12th century, a powerful warrior named Minamoto no Yoritomo defeated rival clans and established a military government. He took the title of shogun. A shogun was a military ruler who governed in the name of the emperor. This marked a turning point. The emperor remained in Kyoto as a sacred symbol, but real political power now belonged to the shogun and the samurai. Japan entered a feudal age. Feudalism is a system in which land is exchanged for military service and loyalty. Lords ruled regions. Samurai protected them. Honor and obedience became central values. The code of Bushido, often called the way of the warrior, emphasized courage, discipline, and loyalty even unto death. For centuries, Japan was ruled by successive shogunates. Some periods were stable. Others were filled with war. During the Sengoku period, which means warring states, rival warlords fought constantly for control. Castles rose across the land. Alliances shifted quickly. Out of this chaos emerged three powerful leaders, Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu. Step by step, they unified the country. In the year 1600, Tokugawa Ieyasu won a decisive battle at Sekigahara. He became shogun and established the Tokugawa shogunate in Edo, which is now Tokyo. Under Tokugawa rule, Japan entered a long period of peace. Peace brought stability. Cities grew, trade expanded, art flourished. But the shogunate also feared foreign influence. In the 17th century, Japan adopted a policy of isolation known as sakoku. Sakoku means closed country. Foreign trade was strictly limited. Most Japanese were forbidden to travel abroad. For more than 200 years, Japan remained largely isolated from the outside world. Yet the world outside was changing rapidly. In the year 1853, American ships led by Commodore Matthew Perry arrived in Japanese waters. Their black steamships shocked the population. They demanded that Japan open its ports to international trade. Japan faced a difficult choice. Resist and risk war or adapt and survive. Internal pressure grew. The power of the shogun weakened. In 1868, a dramatic transformation occurred known as the Meiji Restoration. The emperor was restored to political authority. The shogunate ended. Japan began to modernize at astonishing speed. The samurai class was abolished. Western technology, industry, and education were adopted. Railways were built. A modern army formed. Within decades, Japan transformed from a feudal society into an industrial nation. But even as it modernized, Japan kept its traditions. The emperor remained a symbol. Shinto rituals continued. Respect for hierarchy and discipline endured. Japan's formation was never simple. It was shaped by myth and migration, by courtly beauty and warrior strength, by isolation and sudden change. Next time you see Mount Fuji rising above the clouds or watch cherry blossoms fall in the spring wind, remember the long journey beneath that beauty. Japan was not born in a single moment. It was shaped by balance, between nature and power, between sword and pen, between tradition and transformation. And that balance continues to define it even today. Many samurai struggled to accept this change. For centuries, they had lived by the sword. Their identity was built on loyalty, discipline, and honor. Now the government asked them to put away their swords and become ordinary citizens. Some became teachers. Some entered government service. Others joined the new national army, but a few resisted. In 1877, a former samurai named Seigo Takamori led a rebellion against the new government. It was one of the last echoes of the old warrior age. When the rebellion was defeated, it marked the symbolic end of the samurai era. Japan was changing at a breathtaking speed. Railways began to cross the countryside. Factories rose near rivers and ports. Western clothing appeared in the streets of Tokyo. Students studied science, engineering, and political theory from Europe and America. The government sent young scholars abroad to learn from foreign nations. They returned with new ideas about industry, law, and military organization. Modernization means transforming a society to adopt modern technology and systems. Within only a few decades, Japan had built a modern navy and army. It developed industries in steel, textiles, and shipbuilding. The country that had once closed its doors to the world now stood among powerful nations. But Japan did not simply copy the West. It carefully selected what to adopt and what to preserve. The emperor remained a central symbol of unity. Shinto rituals were strengthened to reinforce national identity. Respect for hierarchy and duty continued to shape social life. This balance between old and new became one of Japan's defining features. By the early 20th century, Japan was no longer an isolated island nation. It had become a regional power. Victories in wars against China and Russia surprised the world. For the first time in modern history, an Asian nation defeated a major European power. Many observers began to see Japan as proof that modernization was possible outside the West. Yet rapid growth also brought tension. Industrial expansion required resources. Political debates intensified. The relationship between tradition and ambition became more complex. The story of Japan's formation does not end with unity. It continues with transformation. Through the 20th century, Japan experienced triumph and tragedy, expansion and devastation. Cities were destroyed during the Second World War. In 1945, atomic bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The country faced defeat and occupation. Once again, Japan stood at a turning point. And once again, it chose to rebuild. The emperor remained as a symbol, but political power shifted to a democratic government. A new constitution emphasized peace. Industry rose from the ruins. Technology, education, and discipline drove economic growth. Within a few decades, Japan became one of the world's leading economies. From myth to monarchy, from samurai to salaryman, from isolation to innovation, Japan's journey has been shaped by resilience. Resilience means the ability to recover after hardship. Look back across the centuries and you can see a pattern. Each time Japan faced external pressure or internal conflict, it did not disappear. It transformed. It adapted. It absorbed what was necessary and preserved what was essential. Next time you see a high-speed train moving beneath Mount Fuji or watch a traditional tea ceremony performed in silence, remember that both belong to the same story. The ancient and the modern exist side by side. Japan was born from legend. It was shaped by warriors. It was unified by strategy. It was transformed by courage. It is a nation built not only on land but on balance. And that balance continues to guide it even today. Yet even after rebuilding from war, Japan's story did not become simple or quiet. Growth brought new questions. Cities expanded upward with glass towers and neon lights. Rural villages grew smaller as young people moved to Tokyo, Osaka, and Yokohama in search of opportunity. A new rhythm of life emerged, fast and precise. In the decades after the war, Japan experienced what many historians call an economic miracle. An economic miracle is a period of extremely rapid growth in industry and wealth. Factories produced cars, electronics, cameras, and later computers and video game consoles. Japanese brands became known around the world for quality and reliability. The country that once feared foreign ships now exported products across every ocean. But beneath this success, older traditions continued to breathe. In spring, families still gather beneath blooming cherry trees. The blossoms fall gently to the ground, reminding people that beauty is temporary. This idea, that life is fragile and fleeting, has existed in Japanese thought for centuries. It can be seen in poetry, in art, and even in the discipline of the samurai. In quiet temples, monks still chant as they did hundreds of years ago. In shrines dedicated to Shinto spirits, visitors bow respectfully and clap their hands before offering a prayer. The emperor remains a symbol of continuity, linking the modern nation to ancient myth. Continuity means an unbroken connection between past and present. Japan today is both deeply modern and deeply traditional. Bullet trains move at extraordinary speed, Yet tea ceremonies unfold slowly and carefully. Advanced robotics and ancient calligraphy exist in the same society. This coexistence did not happen by accident. It grew from centuries of adaptation. Remember how the Yamato rulers borrowed from China but reshaped what they learned. Remember how the samurai blended discipline with spiritual belief. Remember how the Tokugawa shogunate preserved peace through strict order. Remember how the Meiji leaders studied the West but preserved the emperor. At every stage, Japan faced a question: how much should we change, and how much should we remain the same? This question has shaped the nation's identity more than any single battle or ruler. Geography also continues to influence the country. Japan remains vulnerable to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Natural disasters have repeatedly tested the strength of its people. In recent years, powerful earthquakes and tsunamis have caused great destruction. Yet communities rebuild with determination and cooperation. The sea that once protected Japan now connects it to the world. Trade, tourism, and cultural exchange flow in and out. Japanese films, music, animation, and literature travel across continents. What was once an isolated archipelago has become a global cultural presence. But if we look carefully, we can still see the layers beneath the surface. Beneath the skyscrapers lies the discipline of the samurai. Beneath the constitution lies the memory of imperial rule. Beneath the technology lies a spiritual connection to mountains, forests, and sea. Japan was not formed in a straight line. It was formed through cycles of isolation and openness, conflict and peace, destruction and renewal. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of its history. Nations, like people, are shaped by how they respond to change. Some resist and break. Some adapt and survive. Japan adapted. From the first clay pots of the Jomon people to the imperial court of Heian. From the sword of the samurai to the pen of reformers. From closed ports to global trade. From devastation to innovation. The islands in the mist are no longer hidden. Yet they still carry the spirit of their beginnings. Next time you think of Japan, do not think only of technology or tradition. Think of the long journey between them. Think of a land born from sea and fire, shaped by myth and memory, strengthened by resilience. Because the story of Japan is not only about emperors and warriors, it is about balance. And balance, once learned, becomes strength. If we step back and look at the entire journey, we begin to see something deeper than a timeline of events. Japan was never shaped by one single force. It was shaped by tension, between isolation and openness, between sword and scroll, between emperor and shogun, between tradition and transformation. In its earliest days, Japan saw itself as sacred land, born from the sea by divine hands. That belief gave meaning to authority. The emperor was not only a political figure, he was a symbol of cosmic order. Even when real power shifted to the shoguns, the imperial line remained untouched. This unusual dual structure allowed Japan to change its political system without breaking its spiritual continuity. That continuity helped the nation survive enormous shocks. When the samurai lost their status, Japan did not lose its discipline. When the country opened to the West, it did not lose its identity. When cities were destroyed during war, the people did not lose their determination. Determination means the firm decision to continue despite difficulty. You can see this spirit in small details of daily life. In the careful way a craftsman shapes wood, in the quiet patience of a tea ceremony, in the precise timing of a train arriving at the platform. These habits are not modern inventions. They are echoes of centuries of structure and self-control. Even the concept of Bushido, the way of the warrior, has transformed rather than disappeared. The loyalty once given to feudal lords became loyalty to companies and institutions. The discipline of the sword became discipline in study and work. The idea of honor evolved but remained present. History is not a straight path. It is a series of adjustments. Japan adjusted again and again. It absorbed Chinese writing but created its own scripts. It welcomed Buddhism but preserved Shinto. It studied Western industry but kept its imperial symbol. It experienced defeat but rebuilt its economy. This pattern of adaptation might be the true foundation of the nation. When you think of Mount Fuji standing alone against the sky, you see stillness. But inside that mountain lies fire. Japan, too, holds quiet strength beneath calm surfaces. And perhaps that is why its story continues to fascinate the world. It is not only the story of a country, it is the story of how a society can evolve without losing itself. From myth to modernization, from wooden shrines to steel towers, Japan has walked a long road across centuries. Every era left a mark. Every crisis forced reflection. Every transformation demanded courage. The islands remain where they have always been, rising from the Pacific Ocean. The seasons continue to change. Cherry blossoms still bloom and fall. Snow still covers the temples in winter. But within that familiar landscape lives a nation shaped by resilience and balance. And that balance, learned over centuries, may be Japan's greatest achievement. And when we speak about the formation of a nation, we often imagine a single dramatic moment. A battle, a declaration, a coronation. But Japan was not formed in a single day. It was shaped slowly, like a piece of pottery turning on a wheel. Each era pressed its hands against the clay. The Jomon people shaped the earliest patterns of community. The Yei farmers introduced structure through agriculture. The Yamato rulers created imperial authority. The Heian court refined culture and literature. The samurai enforced order through discipline. The Tokugawa shogunate preserved stability through isolation. The Meiji leaders transformed the nation through modernization. No layer erased the one before it. Instead, they remained, one beneath another, like rings inside a tree trunk. If you listen carefully, you can still hear the echoes, in the quiet respect shown toward elders, in the value placed on group harmony. Harmony means living together peacefully and cooperatively. In Japan, harmony has long been considered more important than individual expression. This idea can be traced back to the need for cooperation in early rice farming villages and later reinforced under feudal rule. Even the geography of the islands continues to shape the national character. Mountains divide regions. Earthquakes remind people of nature's power. The sea both protects and isolates. Living on such land requires preparation, patience, and mutual support. History and environment together created a society that values order, resilience, and balance. At times, Japan has faced criticism from outside observers. Rapid modernization created social pressures. Industrial growth demanded long hours of work. Political shifts have brought both stability and debate. But these, too, are part of the ongoing story. A nation is never finished. It continues to form itself with every generation. Young people today walk through cities filled with technology that their ancestors could not have imagined. Yet many still visit ancestral graves during festivals. They celebrate ancient rituals while using modern devices. This coexistence is not accidental. It is the result of centuries of learning how to adapt without dissolving. Adapt means to adjust to new conditions while preserving what is essential. That ability may be Japan's greatest historical lesson. If you return in your imagination to the beginning of our journey to those islands rising from the sea, you can see how much has changed. Small tribal villages became imperial courts. Wooden fortresses became stone castles. Samurai armor gave way to business suits. Oil lamps gave way to electric lights. Yet something steady remains beneath all of it: a respect for tradition, a discipline shaped by history, a belief that even in times of chaos, balance can be restored. Japan's formation is not simply about emperors, shoguns, or reforms. It is about continuity through change. And perhaps that is why its story feels both ancient and modern at the same time. The islands still stand in the mist, but the nation that grew upon them continues to move forward, carrying its past carefully into the future. If we look even deeper, we begin to understand that Japan's history is not only about power or progress. It is also about memory. Memory lives in language. The Japanese writing system still carries characters borrowed from China more than 1,000 years ago. It lives in architecture. Traditional wooden temples are rebuilt again and again using ancient techniques. It lives in ceremony. Bowing remains a gesture of respect, practiced daily. These are not small details. They are threads that connect centuries. At the same time, Japan has shown that remembering the past does not mean refusing the future. When trains became necessary, they were built. When industry demanded innovation, engineers responded. When global markets opened, companies competed. This combination of remembrance and reinvention has shaped modern Japan more than any single ruler. Even after the devastation of the Second World War, the nation did not lose its cultural core. Cities were rebuilt, schools reopened, factories restarted. Within a generation, Japan had transformed itself into one of the most technologically advanced societies in the world. Transformation means a complete and significant change. Yet even in times of rapid change, the country has often returned to the idea of balance. After periods of extreme growth, there were economic slowdowns. After political tension, there were reforms. The rhythm of expansion and reflection has continued. The idea of balance can be seen in Japanese gardens. Rocks are placed carefully. Water flows quietly. Empty space is as important as objects. The design is not chaotic. It is intentional. In many ways, Japan's history resembles such a garden. Conflict and calm exist together. Strength and subtlety stand side by side. When we speak about the formation of Japan, we must remember that it was never isolated from the world entirely. Even during centuries of limited foreign contact, ideas still entered slowly. Even in times of openness, Japan filtered what it accepted. The nation learned to observe, select, and adapt. This careful selection allowed Japan to modernize quickly without losing its internal cohesion. Cohesion means the quality of holding together as a unified whole. Today, visitors may see skyscrapers in Tokyo and assume that modernity erased the past. But step into a quiet shrine at sunrise, and you will see continuity. Watch a traditional festival in a small town, and you will see echoes of ancient clan rituals. Listen to the language, and you will hear layers of history inside everyday words. From myth to monarchy, from feudal battlefields to global industry, Japan's path has never been straight. It has curved like the coastline of its islands. And perhaps that curve is its strength, because a straight line can break easily, but something that bends can endure. Japan endured. It endured invasion threats. It endured civil war. It endured isolation. It endured forced opening. It endured defeat and reconstruction. Through each challenge, it did not remain the same. It changed. And in changing, it survived. That is the true formation of a nation, not the moment it begins, but the way it continues. And as we come closer to the present, we begin to see that Japan's story is still unfolding. The modern nation faces questions that are different from those of the past. Population changes, economic shifts, and global connections create new challenges. Young people grow up in a digital world. Traditional industries evolve. Cities expand while some rural areas grow quieter. Yet once again, Japan responds not with panic but with careful adjustment. Adjustment means making small changes to maintain balance. Technology continues to advance. Japanese engineers design robots that assist the elderly. Researchers develop new energy systems. Artists create films, music, and animation that travel across continents. Cultural influence spreads quietly, not through conquest but through creativity. At the same time, festivals continue in small villages. Lanterns glow at night. Drums echo through narrow streets. Children learn traditional dances that have been performed for generations. The past is not locked in museums. It remains part of daily life. This coexistence is not accidental. It is the result of centuries of learning how to preserve identity while embracing change. If we return once more to the beginning of our journey, to the story of Izanagi and Izanami stirring the ocean, we understand something important. The myth says the islands were formed from drops of water falling from a spear. Each drop created land. Each drop added shape. In the same way, Japan's identity was formed from countless small moments. A clan gaining power, a monk introducing new ideas, a warrior choosing loyalty, a reformer studying abroad, a citizen rebuilding after destruction. No single event created Japan. It was shaped by accumulation. Accumulation means the gradual gathering of many small things over time. When you think about the formation of a country, it is easy to focus on wars or rulers. But sometimes the deeper story lies in quiet persistence, in the decision to rebuild a temple exactly as it once stood, in the choice to maintain language and ritual, in the willingness to adapt without surrendering identity. Japan's history teaches us that strength does not always appear loud or dramatic. Sometimes strength is steady. Sometimes it is silent. The islands still rise from the sea. Volcanoes still sleep beneath the surface. Seasons still turn, bringing blossoms in spring and snow in winter. But the nation that stands upon those islands carries thousands of years of memory, from clay pots to imperial courts, from samurai armor to business suits, from isolation to global presence. Japan continues to walk forward, carrying its past not as a burden but as a foundation. And perhaps that is the quiet lesson hidden in its long formation. Change will come, storms will rise, the world will shift, but balance, once learned, becomes enduring strength. And that strength has shaped Japan from the very beginning.